Hi, my name is Amy Booth and welcome to Our Climate, Our Health.
Let's talk about floods. I'm sure you've all seen the news about the devastating floods that have hit Pakistan. These floods have been caused by heavy monsoon rains and melting glaciers coming on the back of severe heat waves, all of which can be linked to climate change. They are the deadliest floods since 2017. To date, more than a third of Pakistan is underwater. 33 million people have been affected and more than 1,000 people have lost their lives. In 2022 alone, there have been more than 30 incidents of flooding worldwide. Afghanistan, Brazil, Rwanda, Malaysia, Australia, the US. This is some footage of flooding that took place in my own hometown, Durban, South Africa, where more than 400 people lost their lives. The reality is that flooding is becoming more frequent and more dangerous. It is destroying homes, displacing millions, costing the global economy billions, and it's taking lives. And we need to accept that those countries that are being affected are often the ones that have had the least contribution to climate change to date. Pakistan, for example, only produces about 0.5% of the world's greenhouse gas emissions. Contrast this to the US, who historically has produced around 24.5% of all global greenhouse gas emissions. Let's talk about some of the health impacts of flooding. In the short term, as you can imagine, there is an increased risk of drowning, of injury, broken bones, and death. You might also see cases of hypothermia, and weirdly enough, animal bites are more common during flooding. Or carbon monoxide poisoning, usually associated with the use of petrol-powered generators and pressure washers. Let's look at some of the medium-term health conditions. Now you have to think about some of the health conditions that come with increased bodies of often unclean water. You'll see increased rates of diarrhea, of cholera, respiratory infections, diseases borne by insects that thrive in water, for example, malaria. You'll see major water insecurity, which is kind of counterintuitive when you think the problem of flooding is too much water. But flooding damages water systems, pipes, it contaminates clean water sources. When my own family was affected by flooding in South Africa, they were without water for 3 weeks and had to drink rainwater treated with bleach. And certainly anecdotally, there was a rise in waterborne diseases amongst my family and friends. After floods, people often present to health facilities with things like skin rashes, exacerbation of asthma, and obviously you'll see malnutrition due to damage to crops and food insecurity. And then there's the long-term conditions that come from flooding. Now, it can be quite difficult to allocate blame to flooding for these long-term health conditions, but the limited research that has been done on this has found that the number of clinic visits and hospital admissions rise in the year after a flood. Chronic diseases like heart and lung conditions are often exacerbated. People may suffer from disabilities, from injuries from flooding. And importantly is the rise in psychological stress. And I think this is a very important point. We cannot underestimate the role of climate change and natural disasters on our mental health. Depression, anxiety, post-traumatic stress disorder. Imagine having your home destroyed, belongings damaged, financial loss, being displaced, maybe losing a family member. This is an extremely traumatic experience. In fact, one study found that 15 to 20% of people affected by a natural disaster experience some symptoms of PTSD. So what can be done about all of this? Well, apart from just generally trying to reduce the human release of greenhouse gas emissions and limit the rapidly changing climate, at a government level globally, world leaders need to step up and provide support to areas affected by floods, especially those richer countries who are often the cause of the majority of emissions in the first place. Efforts should be made to protect the health of the larger public, providing people with alternative housing, clean drinking water, clean clothes. Disease surveillance needs to be implemented, and health facilities need to prepare for the potential influx of climate and flood-related illnesses. Healthcare providers have to be trained to recognize these health conditions caused by flooding. At an individual level, here are a few tips to preventing illness. and injury from floods. Firstly, don't try and cross flooded roads. Try and avoid spaces where you might get injured from flooding. Don't drink floodwater, rather boil it or chlorinate it first. Seek healthcare immediately if you are concerned about any illnesses. Practice safe cleaning if and when you are able to return to your home. Throw out items that can't be washed. Clean all surfaces with bleach if you can. And after the flooding, attend support groups, chat to people about your experience, and look after your mental health where you can. As a global humanity, let's play our part in limiting our impact on the climate and helping out where we can. I've included a link to organizations that are providing humanitarian aid in Pakistan, so do donate if you are able to. And if there are any topics in particular that you'd like to learn about, just pop it into the comments and I'll do my best to post about it. Stay aware of the impact of floods on our health, and remember, a healthy planet is needed for a healthy population.